The rain hammered against the tall glass windows of the corporate tower as if the sky itself was warning someone inside. 32 floors above the crowded city streets, Elena Hartley stood silently in her office, staring down at the flashing lights below. For most people, the storm outside would have been frightening. For Elena, storms had always meant something else: change. The kind of change that arrived suddenly and never asked permission. But tonight, she wasn't thinking about business deals, board meetings, or the billion-dollar company she had built from nothing. She was thinking about fear. Real fear. The kind that keeps a mother awake at night. 3 days earlier, an anonymous message had arrived on her phone. It contained no threats, no demands, only a photograph. A photograph of her 10-year-old daughter Lily walking out of school. Since that moment, Elena Hartley, the powerful CEO who controlled one of the most successful tech companies in the country, felt something she hadn't felt in years. Helpless. And that was why, the next morning, she hired a bodyguard. But what Elena didn't know was that the man she hired had once owed his life to her. And neither of them had any idea that their past was about to collide again in the most unexpected way. Before we continue, take a quick moment. If you believe that small acts of kindness can change lives forever, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Because this story proves something incredible. Sometimes the good you do for a stranger comes back to you years later, when you need it most. Elena had never imagined her life would turn out this way. 20 years ago, she was just a struggling college student working late shifts at a small diner to pay tuition. Her life back then was simple, exhausting, but simple. She didn't have investors calling her phone or journalists chasing interviews. She just had textbooks, bills, and a stubborn belief that if she worked hard enough, life would eventually change. One winter night during her sophomore year, she was walking home from the diner through a nearly empty bus station. Snow was falling heavily, covering the sidewalks in thick white layers. That was when she noticed him. A young soldier sitting on a bench near the corner. At first, she thought he was just waiting for a bus. But as she walked closer, something felt wrong. His uniform was dirty, and his breathing was uneven. When she reached the bench, she saw the dark stain spreading across his sleeve. Blood. The soldier had been injured. People were walking past him, glancing briefly, then looking away. No one wanted to get involved. But Elena stopped. She crouched down beside him and asked if he could hear her. His eyes were barely open, his face pale from pain and exhaustion. He had clearly just returned from overseas and looked like someone who had been through more than his body could handle. Without thinking twice, Elena called an ambulance and stayed beside him in the freezing snow until help arrived. She held his hand while he drifted in and out of consciousness. She kept telling him to stay awake, to keep fighting, to breathe. Before the ambulance doors closed, the soldier looked at her through half-open eyes, as if trying to memorize her face. Then he was gone. Elena never learned his name. Life moved on. Years passed. Her small college project turned into a startup. The startup turned into a company. And the company turned into a global tech empire. Success came faster than anyone expected. But success also came with loss. Elena's husband passed away when Lily was just 3 years old. From that moment forward, Elena had only one purpose in life: protecting her daughter. Lily became the center of everything. She was bright, curious, and endlessly kind, the kind of child who still waved to strangers and believed everyone in the world had good intentions. Which was exactly why Elena was so afraid. Because the world she lived in now was not kind. The threats had started appearing quietly over the past year. Most were just angry emails from competitors or anonymous trolls online. Nothing serious. Until the photograph. That photo changed everything. So Elena did what powerful people do when they're afraid. She hired protection. The security agency recommended one man above all others. A former Special Forces soldier named Marcus Reed. His record was impressive. Military honors, combat experience, advanced security training. According to the agency, he had protected diplomats, executives, and even foreign officials. But what stood out the most was the note in his file. Reliable, loyal, extremely protective. The next morning, Marcus Reed arrived at Elena's office. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and calm in a way that only people who had survived dangerous places could be. His dark hair was trimmed short, and a thin scar ran along his jawline. He carried himself with quiet confidence. But when Elena walked into the meeting room, something unusual happened. Marcus froze. For just a brief second. As if he had seen a ghost. Elena noticed it immediately. Years of leading boardrooms had taught her how to read people's reactions. Something about her presence had clearly surprised him. But Marcus quickly regained control and introduced himself professionally. Still, something about his eyes lingered. Recognition. Although Elena couldn't understand why. The job began that same day. Marcus started accompanying Lily everywhere. To school, to piano lessons, even to the park. At first Lily found it strange. Having a bodyguard felt like something from a movie. But Marcus wasn't what she expected. He wasn't cold or distant. He was patient, kind, and surprisingly good at making her laugh. Within a week, Lily adored him. Elena, however, remained cautious. She trusted the agency's recommendation, but trust wasn't something she gave easily anymore. Still, Marcus proved himself quickly. He checked every route, monitored every visitor, and stayed alert even during the quietest moments. Nothing slipped past him. But there was something Elena didn't realize. Marcus already knew exactly who she was. The moment she walked into that meeting room, he recognized her. The woman from the bus station. The woman who had once refused to walk away. The woman who had held his hand in the snow while he bled. For 20 years, Marcus had never forgotten her face. Back then he had been a young soldier returning from deployment with injuries he tried to ignore. He collapsed in that station and believed he might actually die there, alone. Until she appeared, a stranger who cared enough to stop. That moment had changed something inside him. It reminded him that the world still had kindness. Now, 2 decades later, fate had placed him back in her life. Only this time, he was the one protecting her. Marcus never mentioned it, not at first, because to him, the debt was personal, silent. But one evening, everything changed. It happened outside Lily's school. Marcus noticed a black car parked across the street that had appeared 3 days in a row. The windows were tinted, and the license plate was partially covered with dirt. Suspicious. When Lily walked out of the school building that afternoon, Marcus stayed alert. The car's engine started the moment she stepped onto the sidewalk. That was enough. Marcus quickly moved Lily behind him and guided her toward their vehicle. The black car suddenly accelerated. Too fast. Marcus reacted instantly. He pulled Lily into the car, slammed the door, and drove away before the vehicle could reach them. The black car followed. What happened next lasted less than 2 minutes but felt like an eternity. Sharp turns, fast acceleration, narrow streets. Marcus drove with precision that came from years of tactical training. Eventually he lost the vehicle in traffic and headed straight back to Elena's home. When they arrived, Elena was waiting at the door. The moment she saw Lily safe, the fear in her eyes softened, but Marcus could see something else there too. Gratitude. That night, Elena asked him to stay for dinner. It was the first time they had spoken about anything other than security plans. The conversation was quiet, personal, and during that dinner, Marcus finally told her the truth. About the bus station, about the snow, about the night she had saved his life. At first Elena stared at him in disbelief. Then slowly, the memory returned. The injured soldier, the ambulance, the freezing winter air. Tears filled her eyes as realization settled in. For 20 years, she had believed that moment disappeared into the past. But now the same man was sitting across from her table, protecting her daughter. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Because sometimes life writes stories too unbelievable to explain. Marcus finally said something simple. He told her that the kindness she showed him that night had stayed with him through every difficult moment of his life. Through war, through recovery, through loss. It reminded him that one person choosing to care could change everything. And now he had the chance to return that kindness. Elena looked at Lily playing in the next room and felt something powerful rise inside her heart. Hope. Because maybe the world wasn't as cold as she had started to believe. Maybe goodness really did travel in circles. Maybe the smallest acts of compassion never truly disappear. They simply wait for the right moment to return. Before we reach the end of this story, here's a special request for you. Comment the word kindness if you believe one small good deed can change someone's entire life. Because stories like this remind us of something we often forget. Every person we meet is carrying a story we cannot see. And sometimes the help we offer today becomes the miracle we receive tomorrow. Months later, the threats against Elena's family disappeared after authorities traced them to a disgruntled former competitor. Life slowly returned to normal. But one thing never changed. Marcus Reed remained part of their lives. Not just as a bodyguard. As family. And every time Elena watched him walking beside Lily, she remembered that snowy night long ago, when she had simply stopped to help a stranger. She had no idea that moment would one day protect the most important person in her world. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe for more emotional stories like this. Because sometimes the smallest act of humanity creates the greatest ripple in someone else's life. And you never know who might come back one day to save yours.